we are going to learn about antique fever. I am Dr. Arun Kumar Singh, Assistant Professor, Department of General Medicine. Our point of discussion will be like this. First, we have a short introduction about the antique fever, then about the epidemiology and pathogenesis, then about the clinical features, differential diagnosis, complications, investigation, management, prevention, and vaccination. Am I audible now? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So, in the introduction part, yeah, just we commonly just antique fever is earlier was commonly known as typhoid fever. Now we just don't use as a typhoid fever, just call as a antique fever. Basically, it is an acute illness associated with fever caused by a Salmonella typhi bacteria. It can be also caused by Salmonella paratyphi, but most common it's Salmonella typhi. Uh, and the related bacterium that usually causes less severe illness and mortality. It is a foodborne disease, as you know. The bacteria deposited in water or food by a human carrier and then spread to the other people. Hello. The causes bacteria. It is a bacteria, as you everyone know. It's a Salmonella typhi, and the family is Enterobacteriaceae. It is a gram-negative bacilli. Best grows at 37 degrees centigrade. Transmission. The route of transmission is basically a fecal-oral route. Close contact with patient or a carrier, contaminated water and foods, fleas and the cockroaches. This is the incidence of a typhoid fever. You can just see the areas which are strongly endemic and sporadic cases. The basically the strongly the endemic areas are like India, Southeast Asia, African countries, and some Latin American countries, and some part of Australia and New Zealand. This is basically a diagram showing about the how the epidemiology agent, epidemiology, host, and environment. And in the three, we just discussed the agent is Salmonella typhi, which is the major cause, and the other one is the Salmonella paratyphi A or B. As you know, that is a family Enterobacteriaceae. It is a gram-negative bacilli, motile with peritracheate flagella. It is a non-acid fast bacilli. The antibacilli have three important antigens. First one is O antigen, which is less immunogenic but also cross-react. It is found on the body or somatic. Then H antigen or a flagellar antigen, it is a strongly antigenic and rapid rise of antibodies in infection via immunization. Lasts longer and specific. So you can know that the H antigen are specific and they are a flagellar antigen basically. VI antigens, we have virulence antigens. They are found in both typhi and paratyphi C. They are purely immunogenic and disappear earlier, may persist in the chronic areas. This is the diagram of Salmonella typhi. You can just see it's a flagellar one, and the size. We are showing the capsule, the somatic O antigen, and the flagellar antigens. Host. Humans are only reservoir and only known susceptible host. And the peak incidence is between 5 to 15 years. 10% of cases occur in infant age group. No sex predilection, and the child constitute 40 to 45% of the multi-drug resistant typhoid cases with a higher case fatality rate. So you can see that it is more common in children, and multi-drug resistance is also commonly seen in the children. We can define as antique fever into three: confirmed case of typhoid fever, probable case of typhoid fever, and a chronic carrier. A patient with a fever, what is a confirmed case? A patient with fever, 30 degrees centigrade and above, that has lasted for at least 3 days with a laboratory confirmed positive culture. So you can say only confirmed case when it is a laboratory confirmed positive culture by blood, bone marrow, yeah, ball. Probable case of typhoid fever: a patient with a fever 8 degrees centigrade or above that has lasted for at least 3 days with a positive zero diagnosis or antigen detection test, but without Salmonella typhi isolation. So in this case, we say that it is probable because it is just zero diagnosed. We just diagnosed by antigen detection test. And what is chronic carrier? The chronic carriers: excretion of Salmonella typhi in a stool or a urine, or repeated positive bile or duodenal sting cultures for longer than 1 year after the onset of acute typhoid fever. Short-term carriers also exist, but their epidemiological role is not as important as that of the chronic carriers. Some important patient excreting Salmonella typhi have no history of typhoid fever. We can say that some of the chronic carriers they never present as with a fever. So these some patients excrete as a typhoid bacteria, but they never one is example is a famous example. Typhoid Mary, she was an basically a asymptomatic typhoid carrier to be identified with the medical science, and she worked in a restaurant, and she was the major outbreak was responsible for the outbreak of the typhoid fever in New York. Now we're just discussing about the factors and responsible for the infection. Environmental. In the environmental, the source of infection. Yes, we already I have told you. Primary are the feces, urine of the cases, or the carriers. Secondary are the contaminated water, food, fingers, and the flies. Spread of infection. Spread of infection also can be due to water contamination, either through food contamination or through house flies. What are the predisposing factors? These are the predisposing. First is the overcrowding, poor personal hygiene, poverty, epilepsy, poor sanitary and water supply situations, and open defecation. These are the basically the cause. Pathogenesis. We just learn about what is the pathogenesis about the Salmonella typhi. So this is the just you can say by a picture about the pathogenesis of the enteric fever. The this bacteria after ingestion they invade the body through the mucosa of terminal ileum, and then they pass through the intestinal mucosa, and after in the internus mucosa then enter the mesenteric lymphoid system, and then come to the bloodstream. This is the asymptomatic bacteria. In this phase, culture will become negative, and after that they colonize in the reticular endothelial system and replicate in macrophages. This again they set back into the blood. This is the secondary bacteremia, and the symptoms are, arise in the secondary bacteremia. Just you can just see the incubation period of is 7 to 14 days, and in this primary bacteremia is 7 to 10 days, and secondary 7 to 16 days. You can just by pictures you can just see that onset of symptoms come around nearly about 10 days, and antibodies appears around 14 to 15 days. What is the responsible for the spread of the infection in the particular person? These depend on the genes, regulate the invasion of the pair spaces, which are these pair patches are present in the terminal ileums. They are the lymphoid system, and the size of inoculation, the amount of the bacteria which just you inoculated, ingested. If it 25% of 10 to the power 5, 50% for 10 to the power 7, and 75% of cases will be infected if it is 10 to the power 9. Depend on the gastric pH. If the pH is higher, there is no secretion of acid, achalaridia, the patient are more prone to this. VI polysaccharide antigens, contaminated H. pylori infections, because H. pylori is responsible for the achalaridia, and immunocompetence. Patient is suffering from any immuno disease, immunocompetence. compromised disease. Now we'll just discuss about the clinical features. Incubation period is 3 to 60 days depending on the size of inoculum. But normally the symptoms appear in 1 to 2 weeks. Clinical feature exhibit a wide range of clinical severity and varies according to age. It can be a mild pyrexia to a fatal severe disease. The initial symptoms which we see after over 2 to 3 days is the most common is the fever and the coated tongue, anorexia. It is 70%. Then other symptoms are like vomiting, hepatosplenomegaly, diarrhea, malaise, myalgia, headache, diarrhea, cough, epistaxis, severe lethargy. Relative bradycardia can be seen. The most important is the fever with coated tongue. In some of the cases, we can say get Salmon color rashes also. These are the clinical features which we get in the first, second, and third weeks. In the first week, the patient presented with malaise, headache, cough, and sore throat in a prodromal stage. The disease classically present with a step-ladder fashion, rise, temperature of 40 to 41 degrees centigrade over 4 to 5 days, accompanied by headache, vague abdominal pain, and constipation, or pea soup diarrhea. In a second week, between the 7 to 10 day of illness, mild hepatosplenomegaly occur in majority of patients. Relative bradycardia may occur and rose spots may be seen. In a third week, the patient will appear in the typhoid state, which is a state of prolonged apathy, toxemia, delirium, disorientation, or coma. Diarrhea will then become apparent. If left untreated by this time, there is a high risk of intestinal hemorrhage and perforation. These are some rare complications of enteric fever: hepatitis, pneumonia, thrombophlebitis, myocarditis, polycystitis, nephritis, osteomyelitis, psychosis, which develop in 2 to 5% of patients, may become a gallbladder carriers also. Just see the typical step-ladder pattern of the disease. The fever goes up a little each day. As the illness progresses, the pattern of fever also sometimes down, then rise. In the second week, we just patient complained of high fever sustained, along with fatigue, anorexia, cough, abdominal symptoms, increase in severity, which patient appears acutely ill, disoriented, and lethargic. Delirium and stupor may be observed. Coma may intervene. These are the rose spots which you can see through a picture. Appear on the 7 to 10 days. In 10 to 20% of individuals, we just find these rose spots. It is basically a macular spots, 2 to 4 mm of size, and appear around 15 to 20 in numbers. They appear in a crops around the periumbilical and anterior chest. Better appreciated in the fair skinned people, last for 2 to 3 days, and leave a slight brownish discoloration of the skin on healing. So they lies only for 2 to 3 days. So this is not a measure. We just get in 10 to 20% of individuals. If course remain uncomplicated, the symptoms start abating by 2 to 4 weeks. Although lethargy and malaise may persist for 1 to 2 months, the relapse rate is 5 to 20% to 2 to 3 weeks after the fever subside or stopping the antibiotics. The relapse mimic the original illness but milder and shorter duration. So we can see that the relapse can be seen in 5 to 20% of cases after stopping the antibiotics. What are the complications? The major complications are the hemorrhage and the perforation. The intestinal hemorrhage, which is less than 1%, and the perforation is less than 0.5%, are infrequent, but they are the important and complications. Increase in abdominal pain, tenderness, vomiting, and features of peritonitis. A sudden rise in pulse rate, intestinal perforation, and peritonitis may be accompanied by hypotension, marked abdominal tenderness, guarding, and subsequent abdominal rigidity. So we can see can get the picture of basically subacute uh, आवाज नहीं आ रही क्या? Yeah. So these are the features of peritonitis, in which the patient complain of abdominal guarding, pain, not passing of flatters, hypotension. These are the systems involved, but in a enteric fever, if but they are the rare one. Central nervous system, the patient may complain of the commonly is encephalopathy, cerebral edema, GBS. You can get sometimes GBS also. Psychosis is one of the major one. In a CVS system, cardiovascular system involvement, patient can come with present with endocarditis, myocarditis, pericarditis, along with congestive heart failure. In a pulmonary system, patient may complain of pneumonia, empyema. There can be a joint pain, osteomyelitis. In a hepatobiliary system, patient cholecystitis, hepatic abscess. Hematological, can get hemophagocytosis syndrome. These are the red flag symptoms in enteric fever. So we should look for that because these are the severe symptoms. Like in a central nervous system, patient come with a complaint of headaches, vomiting, seizures, altered state of consciousness. In a along with chest pain, palpitation, new murmur or change in the characteristic of previous murmur, chill, cough, pleuritic chest pain. Yeah, any local tenderness, jaundice, nausea, vomiting. These are the differential diagnosis of the salmonella infections. On differential diagnosis, we can keep GIT infections like are more acute than the general manifestation, and other infections which are caused by salmonella, other species of the salmonella, pyrexia much lower and shorter duration, malaria, history of previous attack, you can get more rapid onset, shivering and sweating, high early pyrexia, relative infrequent abdominal symptoms and signs, along with positive blood smear. Influenza. This is also more rapid onset, high temperature, severe sore throat and cough, and absence of a palpable spleen and rose spots. Bacillary dysentery. This is also an acute onset, severe bloody diarrhea. The signs and symptoms in dysentery are usually abdominal. Typhus and other rickettsial infection. This are also presentation is acute with high temperature at early stage, along with rigor. Rash in this is a brownish in color and much more profuse and does not fade on pressure. Leukocytosis, along with Bill disease test positive. Tuberculosis. The pyrexia and vague symptoms and sign may be very similar. A chest X-ray or a laboratory confirmation of typhoid may be the only sure method of diagnosis. Brucellosis. These are basically the differential diagnosis. You can just see again. Other than salmonella typhi and paratyphi, other salmonella can cause basically they present the GI symptoms with a short duration of fever, malaria, influenza. Other rickettsial disease like typhus, scrub typhus, brucellosis, tuberculosis. These all can mimic enteric fever. How can we diagnose the case of enteric fever? These are the lab investigations. We just go for the complete blood count. Here we can see that there is a WBC count is normal. And in the 20 to 25% of cases, we can see that there will be a leukopenia. In some cases, you can also get eosinopenia also. And when there will be a normally the platelet counts are normal, but if there is a thrombocytopenia, that it is marker of a severe ileus. There is a relative lymphocytosis is seen. So blood culture in the typhoid fever. This is the basically a more sensitive test in a case of entry fever to isolate the salmonella typhi, because bacteremia occur in the early disease. So the blood cultures are positive in first week in 90% of cases, second week in 75% of cases, and 60% in third week of illness, and 25% in the fourth week of illness. So we can say that if you take a blood in the first week, then the chances of 90% to become a positive. So sensitivity will be higher in the first week and reduce with as the illness progresses. This is a bone marrow culture. If you can take a specimen from blood, either from bone marrow, yeah, urine also you can take. So in a bone marrow, when you take it from a bone marrow, basically the salmonella typhi is an intracellular pathogen in the reticuloendothelial cell of a body, including the bone marrow. So you can just see that its sensitivity is 80 to 95% in a first week, and there is a advantage of bone marrow is you can see it is good even the late disease of antibiotic therapy, because the organism can be isolated after antibiotic therapy also. In some cases, we can just isolate the salmonella typhi from the bone marrow culture. Other method in isolation of enteric pathogens are we can get it from stool culture during second week, urine culture during third week, bile can be a culture obtained by duodenal aspiration, yeah, culture of the rose spots first from the suppurative lesions, CSF, yeah, sputum. So through blood we can get it from first week is more sensitive. So bone marrow, first week is more sensitive, but we can go for the second week also. But other like stool organism can be isolated during second week. In from urine we can get it from third week. Bile culture can be obtained by the duodenal aspiration. These are the serological tests. Other than we just see that we are doing the culture one. This is serological test, commonly known the Vidal test. The everyone might be knowing about the Vidal. It basically measures the immunization antibodies level. Again, OAH and antigens. O antibody IgM appears 6 to 8 days, and S antigen IgM and IgG appear about 10 to 12 days. The timing of the serological test we better after 5 to 7 days of the fever, and the method is a tube method or a slide method. In the tube method, it takes around 6 hours. Better test can detect dilution up to 1 to 1280 concentration. Slide method is it is a faster one. It's done in the 2 to 5 minutes. Can detect only 1:320 concentration. The cutoff value for diagnosis, the level of both OAH antigen is 1:60 dilution. Demonstration of rise in the titer of antibodies by testing paired blood samples 10 to 14 days apart is preferred. What is amnestic response during this? Person who have a prior infection or immunization may develop an amnestic response during a unrelated fever, differentiated by a repetition of test after 1 week. So we can see the rise of antibody titers can be seen in the prior infection, stage of disease, symptomatic or some clinical infections. High titer can be seen in the endemic areas, immunizations, treated cases, amnestic reactions, O antigen cross reaction. O antigen doesn't lost longer. H antigen lasts longer but rise slowly. So these can all hamper the result of Vidal test. So we can get false positive in an infection with the other salmonella serotyphi also, infection with other Enterobacteriaceae, malaria, typhus, sepsis with other organism, cirrhosis, crab vaccination with a whole cell vaccine. False negative can be, we can get in the 30% of blood culture proof cases. Vidal test is negative. This is the typhi dot which is commonly used right now. It's a fast and rapid one, and economically also, and have a high sensitivity and high specificity. It is basically enzyme immunoassay that detect IgG, IgM antibodies against outer membrane protein from OH and V valence antigens. But this just disadvantage is cannot differentiate between acute and convulsion cases. False positive common due to previous infection because typhoid.m detects only ICM. So disadvantage measure is basically cannot differentiate between acute and the convulsion cases. But advantages are good. It is simple and rapid bedside test we can do and have a high sensitivity and high specificity. Just you can just graphically you can just see IgM district test. Salmonella typhi specific IgM antibodies plus Salmonella typhi LPS plus anti-human IgM antibody plus conjugated dye particles. When we did just do the IgM district test, the timing of the test a week after the onset of the symptoms. Should be after the 1 week after the onset of symptoms. The advantages are no training needed, no specialized equipment. It is a rapid and simple one. Method is by serum. A whole blood can also be used, incubated for 3 hours. Antigen detection test basically based on the enzyme immunoassay, counter-immunoelectrophoresis, and coagulation test. You just detect either serum, urinary, or somatic flagellar antigens. PCR basically it is for research purpose. We just do, but not commonly we do PCR. Now we just come to the treatment of typhoid fever or enteric fever. The management depend on this finding the findings, but it's mainly we just do a supportive care along with specific antimicrobial therapy. In the supportive care, we just give fluids, nutrition, antipyretic depending upon the symptoms. We just monitor about the fluid and electrolytes, oral nutrition with a soft digestible diet, surgical care if patient come with intestinal perforation. These are the guidelines for the uncomplicated typhoid fever, enteric fever. Now the major, if it is a fully sensitive, then the first line antibiotic therapy is third generation cephalosporin, basically cefixime or ceftriaxone. And we just give in a dose of 15 to 20 milligram per kg for 14 days. And in a multi-drug resistance cases, we just prefer also third generation cephalosporin in a dose of 15 to 20 mg per kg for 14 days, along with alternative doses azithromycin in 10 to 20 milligram per kg for 1 gram. Azithromycin is given as 1 form for 5 days. In a severe typhoid fever, the drug of choice is ceftriaxone. This is basically if you go for 50 to 75 mg per kg per day or 2 gram per kg for 14 days BD. Now we just discuss about the prevention. How can just prevent this? Basically, enteric fever is a vast disease. this, unsafe water, sanitation, and food with a poor hygiene practice. How can we typhoid be avoided? Avoid risky foods or drinks. Get vaccinated. Use only clean water. Ask for a drink without ice unless you know where it is coming from. Only eat foods that have been thoroughly cooked. Avoid foods and drink from the street vendors. Control of sanitation, protection and purification of drinking water supply. Improvement of basic sanitation. Promotion of food hygiene. Simple hand hygiene and the washing can reduce several cases of typhoid. Other thing is immunization. These are the three we just can we do immunization by three ways. The one is a parental wholesale inactivated vaccine. Another one is oral live attenuated typhi vaccine, typhoral vaccine. Another one is a polysaccharide subunit vaccine, and the last one is the capsular polysaccharide conjugate vaccines. These are the four type of vaccines available in the market. Wholesale vaccine is an heat inactivated phenol preserved wholesale vaccines. Moderately efficacious. Protection persists for up to 7 years. High level of reactogenicity. Patient complain of fever, headache, and severe local pain. Live oral typhoid vaccine. Entry-coated capsule. Basically, it is one capsule. Alternately, can give for 3 days. In a children greater than 6 years, protection start after 1 week of full course. It is liquid formulation also comes 3 dose regime on alternate days basically. And this is one of the capsular polysaccharide vaccine. This is important. Who should get the typhoid vaccine? So typhoid vaccine should be given to the traveler to the part of the world where the typhoid fever is very common. Yeah, person who work with come in contact with the carrier of the disease. Yeah, laboratory and analysts who work with the Salmonella typhi bacteria. These are the person who should get the typhoid vaccine. How we just manage the cases of carriers, because the carrier are the major important in the transmission of enteric fever. And individually considered to be a chronic carrier if he or she is asymptomatic and continue to have a positive stool or rectal swab culture for Salmonella typhi a year following recovery from acute illness. So we just say a chronic carrier when patient of enteric fever after treatment is still for 1 year, we just isolate the Salmonella typhi from the rectal swab or a positive stool. So at least for after 1 year. The rate of carriers is slightly higher among females patients. So female are more carriers, and the patient older than 50 years, and the patient with a cholelithiasis or a schistosomiasis. If cholelithiasis or schistosomiasis is present, the patient probably requires cholecystectomy or antiparasitic medication, in addition to antibiotics, in order to achieve the bacteriological cure. So if a patient is suffering from cholelithiasis or schistosomiasis, so you have to do a surgical procedure to remove the gallbladder. And these are the medication which can given to the carriers. We can just say amoxicillin uh, and bacterium DS. These are given for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. The dose of 160 to 100 mg twice daily. And amoxicillin can be given as a 100 mg per kg per day, given for 6 weeks, and the cure rate is about 60%. Ciprofloxacin can be given as a 400 mg, 750 mg of ciprofloxacin twice daily for 28 days, and the cure rate is about 80%. Carriers should be excluded from any activities involving food preparation and serving, as should convalescent patient and any person with the possible symptoms of typhoid fever. VI antibodies determination has been used as a screening technique to identify carriers among food handlers and in outbreak investigations. The VI antibodies are very high in chronic Salmonella typhi carriers. So we just isolate VI antibodies in a cases of Salmonella typhi carriers. And if your patient is positive, so these persons should be isolated from any activities which are responsible for the transmission of the disease. These are the issues some concerned with the prevention and control of anti fever in India. First one is the lack of reliable data, lack of appropriate diagnostic facilities, and relying on suboptimal tests, irrational use of antibiotics and OTC antibiotics, challenging life conditions, uh, and inability to implement the vaccination. Thank you.